Hey everyone, it's LS, and this is going to be the October patron Q&A video. I think this is coming out in the first couple of days of November, so if you're wondering why is this called October patron Q&A video, the post ends up getting put out at the very end of the month on Patreon. The questions are collected, and then we end up making the video, and then it gets posted a few days thereafter. So anyways, that is what's going on here. If you'd like to ask a question for the next Q&A video, and literally I try to be an open book. I noticed that a lot of these questions are actually pretty reserved. No one's asking any like hard hitting things. A lot of them are pretty LOL related, or they're pretty surface level. So I'm a little bit surprised by that, but you guys can feel free to ask literally whatever you want, and I'll try to answer it as long as it's reasonable and it's not super personal or something like that. So, anyways, just like the last one, let's just get right into it. So the first question is asked by Kaito, and it's a question that actually came up quite a bit in the comment section, which was talking about J4 Soraka as well as the other abstract combos that you'll see on some of the tier lists. And mostly Soraka and Jarvan as a combo. It's Soraka AD carry with Jarvan support down in the bot lane. It's one of those obscure things. It's sort of like Taliyah Pantheon or any of the other bizarre combos that you can sometimes find down in bot lane. There's other bizarre combos that are popping up right now if you actually pay attention to EU West on the high solo queue ladder, where you can find things like Karthus Leona is ending up as a combo. Obviously, Pantheon has begun to make his way as a support pick that goes beyond just a couple of his combo picks, and he's now just a pretty standalone support champion. But Soraka AD carry is just a pretty good AD carry that pairs very well with physical damage supports that have CC lock and stun and things that can really just combo well with her. Obviously, Jarvan goes really well with her because if you chain his knockup with her silence, then you end up just CCing the enemy without them really being able to reply or do anything. With Jarvan's damage coming in from the support role, he doesn't really need a lot of items in order to be powerful. And then combined with Soraka, it's pretty hard to kill both. Jarvan R plus Soraka E doesn't really need an introduction. It's just a very easy kill combo that you can cheese a lot of people with. So anyways, some of the abstract combos down there in bot lane, they do have purposes. Some of them aren't going to really be able to be found on certain solo queue ladders and whatnot. One of the other ones that you might end up seeing is obviously the Kayle Nocturne, which if you watched a lot of the DRX streams on Twitch, you would have been able to see them utilize it a few times, but it's just something that is a little bit of a spin. I consider doing this, obviously, on tier lists for people that want to play with their friends or they want to play with their duos, and these are things that just go against the status quo. One of the next questions is also from Kaito, and it asks, when drafting for Clash, how do I balance between drafting a good comp with a good focus and strong picks and comfort picks for my players? My team is gold to diamond. So Clash drafting is kind of weird, where you should try to obviously draft towards basically your best champions. Composition is going to matter, but it's not probably going to be as important as just solo killing your lane opponents or having a very strong early game, especially not at that MMR. So I would say that comfort champions and champions that you're very, used to playing and used to playing with each other is probably more important than just having a holistic, better team composition. I'm always obviously a pretty big advocate of having a team composition that has a little bit more of an insurance policy than the opponents, and so you can sort of keep that in mind. But yeah, I think that you should really lean on just your comforts and being better, and obviously that's why there's a wide array of champions on the Clash tier list. One of the next questions is from Colby Kish. He says, hey LS, I'd love to hear about what makes Annie so good in solo queue right now. Thanks for considering my questions. So, as of patch 10.22, at least as it currently stands with current itemization, Annie is pretty broken. She can pretty much go 4 roles. She's able to be played mid-top, AD carry, and support, and a lot of this is mostly because of her new E-change, so if she ends up in the support role, she can end up doing things like going Ardent Censer and Athene's Unholy Grail, and she can end up basically hypering an AD carry, utilizing these items. And then because these items are so cheap and efficient, it comes with a lot of power once you have both of them, and this is mostly because of Athene's passive, Harmony, which converts the mana thingy-majiggy into AP, and so Annie actually gets a lot of damage, but Annie has obscenely high base damages. The other thing about Ardent gives her a little bit of a mess, which is something that Annie obviously always likes. Her range inside a lane is very oppressive, but for solo queue, the reason that Annie is basically the queen of all of the tier lists, unless you go on some of those stats websites, which The issue with stat websites compared to tier lists like I make or tier lists like some other content creators make is that the stat websites just produce whatever has the highest current possible win rate. Whenever I make tier lists, I assume that people who are searching me out or searching tier lists like mine out or EDU content, etc., they're not just trying to pick up a champion and go. They're trying to pick up a champion on the basis that you're trying to intentionally do things in order to become a better player as well, and that's why Annie is sort of like the bread and butter. She's extremely simple, extremely high base damage, extremely good 1v2, even if you end up getting caught out, mostly because of Tibbers, and again, high base damage, very easy CSing patterns, pretty simple, everything's very straightforward. She forces you to work on basic fundamentals of the game in order to actually utilize her well. So, in that regard, I think she's really good. One of the next questions comes from Sochi. He says, any plans to come to NA? And, yes. Yes. Soon. Soon. One of the next questions actually comes from, I hope I'm saying this right, Wen? Nguyen? What? I really suck at pronouncing this name. I'm so sorry. Oh, man. I think it's Wen. Which job do you think is the most rewarding for you so far? Coaching, casting, analyst, could be monetary, time-wise, or mental-wise. Are there any jobs that you're interested in later on? So this one's really weird to answer. A lot of people, I don't know how many times I've talked about this like publicly on stream. So I have lots of different jobs essentially. I have Patreon, I have YouTube, I have Twitch, I have like streaming contract stuff that I have to do. I have casting for the LCK. Historically, I had like coaching. Analyst, I think in the way that people think about analyst, I've never really done analyst stuff. I've never written like data or log data or anything like that, data work or whatnot. I've never really taken on that role. I've always basically only done strategical coaching or stuff of that nature. And I guess those are pretty much the things that I do. And then obviously I have like sponsorship requirements. So of everything, a lot of people don't realize this, but it wasn't always this way, but casting ended up becoming my least paying. So if you're asking about monetary, casting was my lowest earned income, compared to everything else. Time-wise, I think everything that I do together is sort of lumped in as one. I would say that I probably work, so I know that during summer and spring and what point, there was definitely weeks where I was on air close to 100 hours a week or so, and sometimes even exceeding that, but I'm working even when I'm not on air, and a lot of people don't realize that. This esports or something like this is a super full-time job. I'm basically always doing something LoL related. I would say that maybe I get like 10 hours a week or something in absolute total where I'm just doing something not LoL related in some regard, and so all of these things do tie in. So monetary wise, obviously things have different earnings than each other, but I feel like they're all pretty similarly the same job. In terms of rewarding, I think the most rewarding thing to me has just been overall just being a content creator. I think casting is a pretty prestigious job that not a lot of people get into, and I feel like I got very lucky being able to get into it, not once but twice. I think that was pretty meaningful, and overall, I would say though that the mental damage that I took this year was way more intense than anything I would have anticipated. Um, and it's at a point where I feel there were definitely many points where I felt broken. I thought like I can't do this anymore. There were many points where streams would end or co-streams would end or something, and I would just want to break down crying from stress because having to constantly figure out ways to do things to not get repetitive and always trying to micromanage different schedules, living in 3 different time zones and whatnot, doing all the casting, trying to keep up with the game, realizing that I'm getting worse at the game because I wasn't actually like playing it, I was only watching it and like casting it. And so because I wasn't actively touching it for months at a time, or when I would touch it, I would barely touch it for any longer than a week or 2 weeks, and I wouldn't really play a lot. I began to feel like the game was becoming alien to me, where it was actually so weird at a point where when I would cast LCK, the graphics were so much higher than stuff that I would be used to watching whenever I would do like Discord screen share or something like that, where the game ended up becoming alien to me in a way. Like every time I would see it, I'd be like, "What's going on?" It looks like I'm watching something else, and I don't know how to really describe that. I think that anyone who plays maybe at an extremely high level probably knows what I'm talking about. At any game, by the way, where stuff will start to feel alien or it'll start to feel very different if you take a break from it for a while. It doesn't feel or look like the same thing anymore, because when you're really in it, it's almost like you're in a different state of like being, where like it's sort of like typing to a typist or just something that you can do naturally or secondhand. Um, and when you're constantly just shifting around, cycling around, doing different things and whatnot, even though you're still like involved with it on a surface level, you're beginning to lose touch, and that made me very, very uncomfortable. And it felt like I was forgetting things very constantly. And it just felt like I was having almost memory lapses and stuff. And so there was a lot of reward this year. This is the biggest year of my life in terms of career, and it's not even over yet. But this was also the most painful year, I think, emotionally, in some ways too. It was both good and bad. I don't know a really good way to describe that, but anyways, I hope this was an in-depth answer for you. Sorry. This next question comes from Chris Griffith. Reminds me of Peter Griffin, which actually Family Guy is from Rhode Island, which is where I'm from. So there we go. Anyways, performance-based analysis owns result-based analysis. So I didn't actually read the entire question right now as I'm saying this. I believe it'll be on the screen somewhere. It was very, very, very long. But ultimately, in the end, what I was getting from it is that performance-based analysis is always better than results-based analysis, and we should use this as a metric for evaluating ladders and LP gains and MMR gains and things like this. But that is a really big problem if you start doing stuff like that, because the system has already shown an inability to actually differentiate sometimes what really did happen in games. You can sometimes see this jokingly when a player was clearly like the best performing player in a game and he gets like a B on Riot's rating or something, or he gets like an A or something, but he was the best performing player, and you have like the KDA Queen or KDA King, whatever, that ends up getting, an S or something. The problem with performance-based analysis is that it also incentivizes poor play in order to diminish loss of MMR or to actually get better MMR, even if it's actually improper play. You could have maybe gone for a kill, but it would have been a 1-for-1. The one kill would have been really good for both you and your team, but you don't go for it because it would have been worse for your MMR. This is just one really simple example I think that I can give that pretty much dismisses this notion that something like this should exist. Performance also is not always indicative of actually good play. You could actually have very, very bad stats, but actually been playing insane. This is one of the problems that I've been very vocal about, even on broadcasts and elsewhere, where a lot of people love to use stats to try to prop up something or someone to be something better than it actually is, because it lacks context. And just like how stats can lack context in that, stats can lack context in this regard, and I think that's very, very toxic, and it would incentivize very, very bad play in order to get better rewards, and I just don't think that's a thing that Riot should ever allow. Koshka2 says, couldn't think of a question, but could you tell us that you believe in us fellow Silver 1 players and that we'll reach Gold 4 this season? Listen, if you play Annie, you're going to reach Gold 4 this season, okay? You got about a week left, and I think that is more than enough time to get a lot of Annie games in. Now, if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed by Annie, I might recommend to you Soraka, okay? Just take her down into the bot lane, utilize Blitz.gg, dodge really bad lobbies. If you get little old Ralph over there picking his patented 47 game Zed with a 20% win rate, and you're on Blitz GG, you know to dodge. If you're in another lobby and, little Timmy up in top lane decides to pick his, world famous 10% 100 game win rate, Yasuo, you're gonna dodge. But realistically, anyone should be able to get gold. Anyone should be able to get platinum or diamond if you really apply yourself. I think that a lot of people, they concern themselves with winning as a direct correlation to getting better. But going up and down LP does not make you a better or worse player, because it's always going to be sort of within like a measurement of where you're at. And I think anyone can definitely get gold if you just apply yourself. If you're really stressing about it, legitimately download Blitz. You can get the link in the description below here on YouTube. You can utilize my link, helps me out, helps the site out, etc. Also, Blitz is going to be pretty big for next season, season 11, and I'm unironically, like, a lot of people flame me saying that this is like a forced ad or something. It's legitimately not a forced ad. There's no other app that does this, and when all the items get reworked, if you're a casual player, if you're, someone that doesn't play the game super actively, so many items are getting reworked. That app will automatically import what pro players are doing, and it'll, recommend you runes and as well as the items to do, rather than just Riot's recommended. Because if you go on Riot's recommended, I mean, it still sometimes recommends Merlin Omicron as a base item, and we just don't do that. So rather than trusting that stuff to actually be correct, you could just follow what pro players are doing. And even if pro players are being kind of weird, it's probably better than just trying to guess on your own. Anyway, speaking of this, Sam asks, what are your thoughts on big preseason changes at the end of each year? Do you think it's a good way to refresh the game and shake up the meta on a semi-regular basis, or would you prefer to see stretches of time longer than 1 year where the meta is allowed to develop further before sweeping system changes? This is the first system change that I think is going to be extremely overwhelming. And the reason that I say that is because while we've had the runes reforged, there's a certain amount of runes that you can actually take. Each tree is pretty defined. You know what you're getting inside of it, etc. This is nowhere near as massive of an overhaul as the item change. And the runes reforged thing was a pretty big thing. And the first time that runes got reworked, it was also a pretty big thing. Obviously, I'm referencing Thunderlord's Decree and stuff like that. So the items is something that's actually putting me off. And when I look at that, it doesn't look like it's cool. It doesn't look fun. It just looks overwhelming. And that's coming from someone like me who normally I'm gonna relish the opportunity to look at all these new things, and it can be really cool. It's just too much at once, is how I'm feeling. I'm feeling almost suffocated by the amount of changes. Now, I will be honest that I have not played on the PBE. I don't see everything that's going on. But from the general gist of conversations that I've had with people, everyone just views it as a headache and a nightmare, not something that's cool. One of my really, really big concerns is that returning casual players are going to be intimidated by this size of a change, and that people who are just regular casual players don't have a lot of time each week to play the game. Maybe they get in 1 to 2 games a night. They're going to be overwhelmed by the size of the changes. And maybe because of the way that items actually help dictate the meta and what champions can and can't be viable, you're going to end up potentially having a total meta shift as well on champions. And this is going to mess with everybody. And then, I don't know, this one seems too much. The runes and stuff, I do like it. The dragons, I do like it. Small changes like that are fine. This one looks really, really, really big. But anyways, to chain onto this, I'm actually a pretty big fan of something big happening in patches more rapidly, rather than the stagnation that we get pretty much all year long. I think that one of the things that has been really hitting my passion for LoL the last 2 years has actually been the way that the balance team goes about balance. It really turns me off. It makes the game less exciting because it's always so bland and it's so boring. And during things like lack of MSI or Worlds, having its own, Worlds had the most meta shift throughout the course of the tournament than anything else did this year. It was actually kind of insane. Now, I'm saying this as someone that has a little bit of knowledge that was also privy to behind the scenes stuff like scrims and whatnot, but the meta shift that happened at Worlds was a lot more rapid, because people are looking for ways to get edges over one another. They're trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work, and this just goes to show that the way that the meta stagnates and gets so dull in every single region where people begin to get afraid and all this other stuff by experimenting or trying new things, etc., is so boring. I really cannot take another year of balance patches and patch rundowns like we got this year. It was the most boring stuff in the entire world. Zion asks, I want to know your whole story in a video from you. Can you talk more about yourself? So obviously, I don't think this is like the place to really do it. There's actually quite a lot of videos that already exist. You can look up my reflections video from I think 2014 or 2015, 2014, I think. I did a reflections video. It goes extremely in depth there about all of my hardships, dealing with homelessness, dealing with poverty, dealing with just abandonment and everything that you could possibly imagine, and how I made it in LoL, and how League of Legends and Twitch and YouTube basically like all saved my life, and how probably I would, I mean this. I genuinely mean this. I might actually just be dead right now if it weren't for like League and Reddit and Twitch. And I know that sounds really dark and morbid, but I genuinely think it's real. I think that's a real. I think that's a pretty real statement, as things were just really really dark and gloomy in my life, and it didn't feel like there was a way. And I don't know. League changed my life, and I mean we're going on 7 years ago now, and 7 years is obviously a really long time, and so much has changed, and so many people I've met along the way, and League changed everything. So many people and friendships that now I have that I wouldn't have met through this game, and maybe I would have met different people or had different friendships and stuff, but I like the ones that I have now, so that's very nice. There's also a Score Esports video about me. There's the reflections, and then there's I think there's like tidbits that are like ripped on YouTube of like life talks that I've had. So you can find those on YouTube. Anyways, for the final question, Nuppery, I hope I'm saying this right. I hear you speak on the NA mindset fairly often, refusing to improve, admit failure. Always thinking your way is the best, or not even trying what your coach suggests. What are some of the root causes of this mindset, and what do you think some of the solutions to it are? So this is, I think, ingrained in sort of American culture. There's no like fixing this on a grand scale. There's only trying to fix it and select individuals or like teams, I think, but there's no way to fix NA solo queue ladder. There's no way to fix things like that. So I think it all starts culturally, and what I mean by culturally is if you're in America, or if you've ever been to America. I'm American. I lived there, up into my late teens, and then I came to Korea, and I would never want to go back for long periods of time. I go back for coaching. That's about, that's about it. I'm gonna go back for, yeah, it's fine. But NA has a lot of things. I don't want to get into this on this sort of a video because I feel like this is a topic that you can't just like brush over with comments, but talked about this a lot in the roundtable discussion with Dom way earlier on my YouTube. Talked about it with Hotshot GG. Those are two really in-depth discussions that go into this a lot. But basically, NA has a lot of problems with like what you're saying. A lot of entitlement, a lot of people just wanting... They like the idea of being good without the work that goes into it. They like the idea of being better but not getting better. Everyone wants a participation trophy. You guys remember participation trophies growing up? Everyone gets an award. Everyone's entitled to everything. Everyone, customer's always right. So many things are just so weird. And I mean, you can look up so many YouTube videos on interactions. I'm sure you can do this with like every country, but there's a reason that when it comes to video games, NA is typically only good at video games that only it plays, or only it predominantly plays. Like if other regions still play it, they don't play it to the same extent as NA. And I definitely think there's like a reason for that, for sure. Obviously, I've been around in esports now. I'm going on 14, 15 years pretty soon. There's obviously some people that have been around the scene longer than I, and it's always pretty much been the same across every esport that I've ever seen. A lot of people will reference like certain esports that NA is really good at, or in games and stuff, or they'll reference contact sports like baseball and football and things like that. And they'll say that NA is the best in these things, so what is different there? And then this gets very convoluted, and it's a whole different type of talk and topic. But you could also then say that, well, these things are culturally accepted: football and baseball and basketball, and things like that. So I think it really does go back to culture and the way that everything is sort of set up, and yeah, pretty much that. Yeah, that's all I'm that's all I'm willing to go into on this one. Anyways, that's it for the October patron Q&A. And like I said at the very beginning, people can feel free to ask more personal questions as long as it's not like overly personal or something. I basically want these Q&As to be a window for people to ask things about the scene or ask me things directly that maybe, you don't get to ask me on stream or you don't get to see elsewhere, or you really want, the question answered. That's what I basically want this to be. I want it to be an open dialogue for things that are important. As always, we're going to keep the upvote system here on Patreon, so higher like comments, more likely to get answered if they're repetitive, or if I see the question come up a lot throughout the questions, then it'll probably guarantee that that question will get selected inside of a video. Anyways, guys, thanks so much, and as always, thanks everyone that continues to support and whatnot, and thanks everyone that continues to support and just help out with everything. And I'm really hoping to be able to implement more things, obviously, on Patreon in coming months I'm really hoping to be able to implement more things in coming months on Patreon. And then also, I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but there is also the highlights channel, and there's also the highlights channel that is actually getting quite a bit of traction over the last couple of months. And I don't think a lot of people on the main YouTube channel do know about it. A lot of people also think that it's not my YouTube channel, but it is. So you guys can check out the highlights video. The Patreon support will directly be going into helping that channel as well. So I hope you guys had a good Halloween, even if you didn't celebrate it, and I hope that the rest of the holidays this year for you are all going to go swell. I know that obviously the off season is now in effect, so we're going to have some exciting things going on there. I'm really interested to see what is going to happen across the globe with all the teams and whatnot, what kind of roster shuffles are going to happen, and things of that nature. I'm also really looking forward to preseason. Let's see if it's going to go over well, but who knows? So thanks as always, guys. It means a lot. Bye.